Echoes of authority. The week following Nathaniel's appearance at her gallery became a strange, liminal space for Olivia. By day, she maintained her routine at brushstrokes, mentoring artists, planning exhibitions, negotiating with collectors. By night, she pored over the documents he had left, examining the legal language that had preserved her connection to Blackwood Enterprises. She sat at her kitchen island, hair pulled back in a messy bun, reading glasses perched on her nose as she studied financial reports Nathaniel had smuggled out. The company's decline was stark in the numbers before her. 3 consecutive quarters of losses, credit rating downgraded twice, employee pension fund dangerously depleted. They've managed to destroy in 3 years what took my father 4 decades to build, she murmured to her cat Perseus, who watched with characteristic feline indifference from his perch on a nearby stool. Her phone chimed with a text from Nathaniel. Meeting with potential investors tomorrow. They want assurances about signature before proceeding. Need decision soon. Olivia set the phone down without responding. The vindictive part of her, a part she rarely acknowledged, wanted to let her stepbrothers watch their empire crumble. They had shown no mercy. Why should she? Yet the thought of thousands of employees, people who had worked alongside her father, who had families and mortgages and dreams, losing everything gave her pause. The next morning, she arrived at the gallery to find Priya already there, arranging a fresh bouquet in the reception area. "You look exhausted," her assistant observed. "Bad night?" Olivia managed a thin smile. "Just wrestling with ghosts." "The handsome ghost who showed up at the exhibition?" Priya raised an eyebrow. "He's called twice already this morning." "Of course he has," Olivia sighed. She hesitated, then made a decision. "I need you to clear my afternoon and find me everything you can on Blackwood Enterprises' current situation. News reports, business analyses, industry gossip, everything." By noon, Olivia had her answer. Though it wasn't what she'd expected, the problem wasn't just her brother's mismanagement, it was systematic ethical breaches. Environmental violations hushed up with bribes, safety incidents at manufacturing facilities concealed from regulators, financial manipulations that skirted securities laws. When her phone rang and Nathaniel's name appeared, she answered immediately. "I need to see it for myself," she said without preamble. "See what?" "The company, the headquarters. I need to walk through it before I decide." A pause. "That could be complicated." "Those are my terms, Nathaniel. Either I see firsthand what's become of my father's legacy, or my signature stays in this gallery, far away from my brother's grasping hands." 3 hours later, she found herself standing across the street from the Blackwood building, its once gleaming facade now somehow dimmer, as if the structure itself reflected the company's decline. Nathaniel waited beside her, tension evident in the set of his shoulders. "Your brothers are at an emergency board meeting across town," he said quietly. "We have maybe 90 minutes before anyone who might recognize you returns." They entered through a side entrance, using Nathaniel's still-active security credentials. The differences were immediately apparent. Where once the lobby had featured rotating displays of sustainable innovations the company had developed, now generic corporate art hung on the walls. The receptionist, someone Olivia didn't recognize, barely glanced up as they passed. As they moved through the building, evidence of decline was everywhere. Empty desks, dispirited employees speaking in hushed tones, conference rooms, once buzzing with creative energy, now silent. "Engineering department's been cut by 60%, Nathaniel explained as they passed a half-empty floor. Research and development's budget was slashed to almost nothing, and the Sustainable Materials Initiative, Olivia asked, already knowing the answer. "Abandoned within months of your departure, too expensive, according to Marcus." They took the executive elevator to the top floor, a journey that felt like traveling back in time for Olivia. The boardroom, where she had last signed away her birthright, was unoccupied. She walked slowly around the table, trailing her fingers along the polished surface. "Who's this?" she asked, nodding toward a portrait that had replaced her father's on the wall. "Vernon Harrington, major investor who helped your brothers push you out. Recently withdrew his support when certain practices came to light." In her father's, now Damien's, office, Olivia found herself drawn to the window overlooking the city. From this height, everything looked so small, so manageable, an illusion her brothers had clearly fallen prey to. "If I sign," she said finally, "what exactly happens?" Nathaniel approached, standing close enough that she could detect his familiar scent, sandalwood, and something uniquely him. "The restructuring goes forward. Emergency funding gets released. The company survives, at least for now. And my brothers remain in control," she concluded, bitterness edging her voice. "Not necessarily." Something in his tone made her turn to face him. "The investors have lost faith in current management. They're insisting on leadership changes as part of the restructuring." A small flame of possibility kindled within her. "What kind of changes?" "New CEO, for starters, new board members, environmental and ethical oversight committees with actual teeth." He hesitated. "Your signature gives you leverage to demand conditions." She studied him, really looked at him for perhaps the first time since his appearance at her gallery. The past 3 years had added subtle lines around his eyes, a touch of silver at his temples. But what struck her most was the hope in his expression, hope she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a very long time. "Why did you really leave, Nathaniel?" "The real reason." His gaze didn't waver. "Because every decision they made betrayed everything your father stood for, everything you fought for." A beat of silence. "And because I couldn't look at myself in the mirror anymore, knowing I'd said nothing when they forced you out." The confession hung between them, weighted with regret and something else, something neither was quite ready to name. Olivia turned back to the window, to the city spread before her. Somewhere out there was her gallery, her sanctuary. Yet here, in this office where her father had once dreamed of building something that mattered, she felt the pull of unfinished business. "I need time," she said finally, "and information. All of it. Every dirty secret, every ethical breach, every financial manipulation. If I'm going to consider saving this company, I need to know exactly what I'm saving it from." Nathaniel nodded, relief evident in the slight relaxing of his shoulders. "I'll get you everything, but we don't have much time, Olivia. Days, not weeks." As they prepared to leave, a framed photograph on a side table caught Olivia's attention. She picked it up. Her father on the day the company went public, his arm around a much younger Olivia, both beaming with pride and possibility. "He always believed you would be the one to carry it forward," Nathaniel said softly. Olivia placed the photo carefully back in its place. "Perhaps I still will," she replied, "but if I do, it will be on my terms, not my brother's. And certainly not to save them from the consequences of their actions." As they slipped out of the building, unnoticed and unremarked, Olivia felt something shift within her. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the first stirrings of reclamation. The company still carried her name after all, and names, like signatures, held power. Whispers of the past, the underground parking garage of the Grand Meridian Hotel, offered the anonymity Olivia required. She adjusted her sunglasses, unnecessary in the dimly lit concrete space, but useful for concealing her identity. Beside her, Nathaniel checked his watch. "They should be here any minute," he murmured. "Are you sure about this?" Olivia nodded, her resolve hardening. "If I'm going to fight, I need allies who know the battlefield." The elevator doors opened, revealing 4 figures who moved cautiously toward them. Olivia recognized them immediately. Eleanor Vogel, the company's longtime general counsel, Dr. Jin Park, head of research, Thomas Whitman, chief operations officer, and surprisingly, Patricia Donovan, her father's former executive assistant. who'd been with Blackwood Enterprises for over 30 years. "My God, it really is you," Eleanor said, removing her glasses as if to ensure her eyes weren't deceiving her. "When Nathaniel said he'd found a way to save the company, I never imagined—" "I haven't agreed to anything yet," Olivia clarified, gesturing toward the collection of chairs Nathaniel had arranged in this unlikely meeting place. "I'm here to listen." For the next hour, the four insiders painted a devastating picture of Blackwood Enterprises under her brother's stewardship. Thomas detailed operational corners cut, safety protocols ignored. Dr. Park described research initiatives abandoned despite promising results because they didn't promise immediate profits. Eleanor reluctantly outlined the increasingly desperate legal maneuvers employed to hide financial irregularities from shareholders and regulators alike. Olivia absorbed each revelation, each betrayal of her father's principles, with outward calm that belied her inner turmoil. "Why have the four of you stayed?" she finally asked. "Why not leave as Nathaniel did?" The four exchanged glances before Thomas answered. "Someone had to remain to—" Shadows of inheritance. The Blackwood building cast long shadows across the financial district as evening descended, its glass facade reflecting the amber glow of sunset. Inside the top-floor boardroom, Olivia Blackwood tucked a strand of chestnut hair behind her ear as she presented the quarterly projections to the executive team. At 28, she had practically grown up within these walls, learning every aspect of Blackwood Enterprises from her father, Richard, who watched her now with unmistakable pride. "With the new Sustainable Materials Initiative, we're projecting a 17% increase in market share by next quarter," she concluded, her voice steady despite the skeptical glances from her stepbrothers sitting at the far end of the table. Richard Blackwood rose from his chair, his commanding presence silencing the room despite his recent fragility. "This is exactly the vision that will carry Blackwood Enterprises into the future. Innovation with conscience, just as I always intended." Later that evening, as they shared tea in Richard's office, he placed a weathered hand over hers. "They don't see what I see in you, Olivia. Your compassion isn't weakness. It's what will make this company truly exceptional." She smiled, but the worry lingered. "Damien and Marcus think I'm too soft. They want aggressive expansion, regardless of environmental impact or worker conditions. And that's precisely why you, not them, will lead when I'm gone." His words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken acknowledgement of his declining health. 3 months later, Olivia stood alone at her father's grave, rain mingling with tears on her face. The funeral had been elaborate, befitting the magnate Richard Blackwood had been, but now, in the aftermath, she felt a coldness that had nothing to do with the weather. It began with small exclusions. Meetings rescheduled without notifying her, reports withheld. Then came the gradual stripping of responsibilities, project by project, until she found herself effectively sidelined in the company she had helped build. "It's nothing personal, sis," Damien said, his voice silky smooth, as he lounged in what had once been her father's chair. "The board simply feels the company needs a firmer hand." "Firmer hand," Olivia echoed, disbelief sharpening her tone. "You mean cutting corners on safety regulations, outsourcing to factories with documented labor violations?" Marcus, the younger but more calculating of her stepbrothers, adjusted his tie. "The business landscape has changed. Your environmental initiatives are commendable but costly. We're simply being practical. Our father built this company on ethics. Our father," Damien interrupted, emphasizing the word with thinly veiled contempt, "is gone. And frankly, his sentimentality nearly bankrupted us twice." The final blow came 3 weeks later, a board meeting she wasn't informed of until minutes before. A restructuring plan that removed her from any meaningful position. A buyout offer for her shares that was insultingly low. "You're too soft for this world, Olivia," Marcus said, sliding the papers across the table. "Take the money, start a charity, do whatever makes you feel good, leave business to those who understand it." She looked around the table at faces she had known for years, men and women who had smiled at her father's funeral, who had praised her work to her face. None would meet her eyes now. In that moment, something hardened within her. Without a word, she signed the papers, her signature flowing across the dotted line with a flourish that betrayed none of the anguish tearing through her. She stood, smoothed her skirt, and walked to the door. There she paused and turned. "You've won the company," she said softly, "but you've lost its soul, and someday that will cost you everything." With dignity intact but heart shattered, Olivia Blackwood walked out of the building that bore her name, vowing never to return to the world that had so coldly discarded her, canvas of solitude. 3 years passed like brushstrokes on an empty canvas, each day adding texture and color to Olivia's new life. Brushstrokes. Gallery occupied a converted warehouse in the Arts District, its exposed brick walls and skylights creating a sanctuary far removed from the steel and glass towers of her past. "Perfect alignment, Theodora," Olivia called out, gesturing to the young artist adjusting her installation. "The lighting catches it beautifully from this angle." The gallery had begun as her refuge, but had blossomed into something unexpectedly fulfilling. Olivia had discovered a talent for spotting promising artists, particularly those whose work carried messages of environmental and social consciousness, values her father had instilled in her that she now championed through art rather than corporate policy. She circulated through the space, making final adjustments before tonight's exhibition opening. Local press would be covering it. Her gallery was gaining recognition for launching careers of artists previously overlooked by the established art world. Her assistant, Priya, followed with a clipboard confirming last-minute details. The caterers are set up, the photographer arrives at 6, and I've confirmed RSVPs from the Tribune Critic and 3 gallery owners from Uptown, Priya reported. "Oh, and that community arts program for at-risk teens. They've accepted your offer to host workshops here." Olivia smiled genuinely. "Excellent. That's the news I was hoping for." This was the kind of impact she valued now, tangible, immediate, meaningful. Her phone vibrated, another notification about Blackwood Enterprises. Though she'd severed all ties, she couldn't help monitoring her family's company through business news. Recent headlines suggested trouble, plummeting stock prices, executive departures, rumors of ethical violations. She ignored the alert, as she had dozens before it. Evening arrived, with the gentle buzz of conversation filling the gallery. The exhibition, featuring works exploring human connection in digital age isolation, had drawn an impressive crowd. Olivia moved through the space with practiced ease, introducing artists and engaging potential buyers. "This piece speaks to me," commented an elderly patron, gesturing to a mixed media work depicting intertwined hands formed from circuitry and organic materials. "The artist calls it digital intimacy," Olivia explained. "She's exploring how technology both connects and separates us." As the evening peaked, Olivia retreated to her small office for a momentary respite. Through the glass wall, she could see the event thriving without her. This was her world now, smaller perhaps, but entirely hers. No boardrooms, no betrayals, no compromises of her values. The knock on her door was so soft, she almost missed it. When she looked up, the world she'd carefully constructed seemed to tilt on its axis. Nathaniel Reed stood in her doorway, as impeccably dressed as she remembered, though the confident set of his shoulders seemed diminished. As Blackwood Enterprises' financial director, he'd been her closest ally in the company, and privately, though she'd never admitted it to anyone, the man who had occupied her thoughts long after business hours. Olivia, he said simply, her name, carrying a weight of unspoken history between them. She stood, grateful for the desk between them, as she collected herself. Nathaniel, this is unexpected. I wouldn't have come if it weren't important. His eyes, that particular shade of amber she'd never quite forgotten, moved briefly to take in her office, the antique desk that had been her father's, the art, books stacked neatly on industrial shelving, the wall of photographs featuring artists whose careers she'd helped launch. "You've built something remarkable here," he said, genuine admiration in his voice. "Thank you," she replied, professional courtesy masking the turbulent emotions his presence evoked. "But I doubt you came to discuss my gallery." He exhaled slowly. "No, I came because Blackwood Enterprises is failing, spectacularly and publicly. Your brothers have run it into the ground." Despite herself, a flicker of satisfaction crossed her features. "And this concerns me. How, exactly? I signed away my connection to that company years ago." "Not entirely," Nathaniel said, placing a folder on her desk. "There's a clause in your father's original company charter, one that even your brothers, who couldn't erase. Major structural changes to the company require unanimous consent from all Blackwood heirs, regardless of current share ownership." Olivia's breath caught. "That's impossible. The lawyers would have found it." "Your brother's lawyers were thorough in serving their clients' interests, but they missed this. It was buried in amendments your father made shortly before his death." Nathaniel's voice softened, almost as if he foresaw what might happen and left you a safeguard. Outside the office, the exhibition continued. Laughter, conversation, the clink of glasses, but inside, time seemed suspended as Olivia processed his words. "So they need my signature," she said finally, the irony not lost on her. "The same signature they couldn't get rid of fast enough." Nathaniel nodded. "Without it, the company can't complete the restructuring needed to secure emergency funding. Without that funding—" He left the sentence unfinished. "They'll go bankrupt, Olivia." Completed for him, the reality of it settling over her. Thousands of employees will lose their jobs. Yes. His gaze held hers steadily. People who had nothing to do with how you were treated. A moment of silence stretched between them before he answered. "Because I resigned 3 months ago. It couldn't be part of what they were doing." He hesitated. "And because I thought you might actually open the door if it was me." She turned back, studying his. Olivia stared at the small device. "You've had this for 3 years. I tried to find you after you left," Patricia explained, "but you disappeared so completely. It wasn't until Nathaniel mentioned your gallery that I knew where to look." She pressed the drive into Olivia's palm. "He never lost faith in you, even at the end." Later that evening, Olivia sat in her apartment. Perseus curled beside her on the sofa, the flash drive connected to her laptop. With trembling fingers, she clicked on the single video file it contained. Her father's face filled the screen. Thinner than she remembered, clearly filmed during his final decline, but his eyes still held that unmistakable intensity. "Olivia," he began, his voice raspy but determined, "if you're watching this, then my fears about Damien and Marcus have come to pass. I had hoped my presence would be enough to keep their baser instincts in check, but I've come to accept that my time is shorter than I'd like." He paused, a coughing fit momentarily overtaking him. "I've made provisions, legal safeguards that should give you leverage if they try to force you out. Patricia knows the details, but more important than any legal document is what I need to tell you now. This company was never meant to be just a business. It was meant to be a testament to the belief that profit and purpose can coexist, that commerce can serve community." His eyes seemed to look directly into hers, across the divide of years and death itself. "You are the only one who truly understood that. Whatever happens, whatever choices you make, know that you were always the heart of Blackwood." It's true. Air in every way that matters. The video ended, leaving Olivia sitting in silence, tears streaming down her face. It was past midnight when she finally picked up her phone and texted Nathaniel. "I've made my decision. Meet me tomorrow, 9 a.m., at the gallery." He arrived early, the anxious set of his shoulders betraying his uncertainty about her decision. Olivia led him to her office without a word, closing the door behind them. "Before I tell you my decision," she said, "I need to know something. 3 years ago, when they pushed me out, where did you stand?" Nathaniel held her gaze. "I objected. In the board meeting, I threatened to resign, but when it came down to it, I didn't follow through. I told myself I could do more good from the inside." His voice dropped. "The truth is, I was a coward, and by the time I found the courage to leave, you were long gone. And now? What do you want from all this?" "Redemption, maybe," he admitted. "For the company, for myself." He hesitated. "A chance to rebuild something worth building, with someone who remembers what that looks like." Olivia studied him, searching for any sign of deception. Finding none, she nodded almost imperceptibly. "I'll sign," she said finally, "but not to save my brothers, not even to save the company as it exists now." She moved to the window, looking out at the street where her new life had taken root. "I've spent 3 years rebuilding myself from the ground up. Now I'll do the same for Blackwood. My signature comes with conditions, non-negotiable ones." Turning back to him, she outlined her terms. Her brothers removed from operational control, full environmental and ethical audits, reinstatement of sustainable initiatives, transparency with regulators about past violations, and most significantly, her installation as executive chairperson with veto power over all major decisions. "The investors won't like that last part," Nathaniel cautioned. "Then they can watch the company collapse," Olivia replied, her voice steady with newfound purpose. "I'm not interested in half measures or symbolic positions." Something like admiration flickered in his eyes. "You've changed." "Yes," she acknowledged, "I had to." Over the next days, as negotiations intensified and word of her possible return sent tremors through corporate circles, Olivia found herself working closely with Nathaniel again. The easy synchronicity they had once shared in business matters, gradually re-emerging. Late one evening, as they reviewed restructuring documents in her gallery after hours, the professional boundaries between them momentarily dissolved. "Why did you never say anything?" she asked suddenly. "Before everything, you fell apart about how you felt." Nathaniel looked up, surprise evident in his expression. "How did you—" "Patricia told me yesterday, said it was the worst-kept secret in the executive suite, that you were half in love with me for years." He set down his pen, a rueful smile playing at his lips. "Patricia always did see too much." After a moment's hesitation, he continued, "I was your father's right-hand man. You were his daughter. It seemed complicated. And now? Now, everything's complicated," he said softly, "but in different ways. The air between them charged with unspoken possibilities, possibilities that would have to wait. There was a company to save first, or rather, to transform, and facing her brothers would require all the strength she could muster. As dawn broke the following morning, Olivia stood before her mirror, no longer the wounded exile, but a woman returning to reclaim what was rightfully hers. The signature they had once coerced from her would now become the instrument of their reckoning, and perhaps of something new rising from the ashes of betrayal. Symphony of reclamation. The Blackwood Building's boardroom had been the scene of Olivia's greatest humiliation. Now, as she strode through its doors precisely at 10 a.m., it would witness her triumph. She wore a tailored emerald suit, her father's favorite color, her posture impeccable, her expression composed. Nathaniel followed a step behind, carrying the folder containing the restructuring documents that required her signature. Around the massive table sat the board members, many of whom had averted their eyes 3 years ago while her stepbrothers orchestrated her removal. Their expressions now ranged from shock to calculated neutrality. At the head of the table, Damien and Marcus sat like dethroned monarchs, their customary arrogance dimmed by desperation. "Gentlemen," Olivia said, her voice steady as she took her place at the opposite end of the table. "I believe you've been waiting for my signature." Damien recovered first. "Olivia," he began, his tone conciliatory, "we appreciate your coming. As Nathaniel must have explained, this is merely a formality required by an obscure clause in the Charter, a clause our father included specifically to prevent what you two attempted," she replied coolly. "Not so obscure in its purpose, I think." Marcus leaned forward. "Let's not revisit ancient history. The company is at a critical juncture." "Of your making," Olivia interrupted. "I've reviewed the books, Marcus. All of them, including those you've kept from regulators. I know exactly what you've done to our father's legacy." Eleanor Vogel, seated midway down the table, slid a document toward the center. "For the record, these are the full terms under which Ms. Blackwood has agreed to provide her signature for the restructuring." Murmurs rippled through the room as board members skimmed the document. Damien's face flushed with anger as he reached the section detailing leadership changes. "This is extortion," he hissed. "You can't seriously expect us to step down from operational control of our own company." "Your company," Olivia echoed, allowing herself a small, cold smile. "The company you've driven to the brink of collapse? The company facing criminal investigations because of your decisions? That company." She gestured toward the document. "Those are my terms. Non-negotiable." The board chairman, Harold Fletcher, an old friend of her father's who had disappointingly sided with her brothers 3 years ago, cleared his throat. "The investors are prepared to accept these terms given the extraordinary circumstances." "They don't have a choice," Nathaniel added quietly. "Without Olivia's signature, there is no restructuring. Without restructuring, there is no emergency funding. Without funding—" He let the implication hang in the air. For the next hour, the room buzzed with legal discussions, pointed questions, and occasional outbursts from Damien. Throughout it all, Olivia remained composed, addressing each concern with the quiet authority she had inherited from her father and the steel she had forged in herself during her exile. Finally, with the board's reluctant approval secured, Olivia removed an elegant fountain pen from her pocket, her father's pen, given to her on her 21st birthday. "Before I sign," she announced, "I want to make one thing absolutely clear. I'm not doing this to save either of you." She looked directly at her stepbrothers. "I'm doing this for the thousands of employees whose livelihoods you've endangered, for the communities our company serves, for the environmental initiatives you abandoned, and most of all, for our father's vision of what Blackwood could and should be." With deliberate grace, she signed each document, her signature no longer a symbol of defeat, but a declaration of intent. As she completed the final page, she looked up to find Marcus studying her with newfound wariness. "You won't last 6 months, he said softly. "The business world will eat you alive." Olivia capped her pen. "Perhaps, but I've already survived being devoured by family. Corporate sharks seem rather less intimidating in comparison." "I underestimated you," he admitted, surprising her. "We both did." "Yes," she agreed simply. "You did." "This isn't over," he added, the brief moment of honesty eclipsed by habitual calculation. "Boards can be swayed. Investors can lose confidence." Olivia met his gaze steadily. "Then it